height for you there now.
It's okay.
All right.
Great
Well,
show, it's good. Thank you. So when I was little, I lived in my imagination the whole time. I either had my nose stuck in a book or I'd be following my mum around Super Value as she did the food shop and pretending that the mustard was trying to kill me. And I'd be doing both of the voices for both me and the mustard. And to everyone else, it probably looked a bit mad. But someone that always supported that side of me was a woman called Flo. And Flo was our minder. So we'd go to her every day after school, and she would notoriously make these man-sized portion bowls of Irish stew that she was determined to make us all eat, even though we were like 7 and 8. And she was like, I want to see the bottom of that plate now. We're going to call the guards. All the usual stuff. I think everyone's nanny did that at some stage. So she was always full of fun and imagination herself in her own right. And she'd tell stories out of the most kind of insignificant everyday things that we would take for granted. So we'd get off the bus after being in town all day, and she'd spot 2 magpies sitting on a phone line, and she'd go, Jamie, they followed us all the way here. Weren't they very good? Do you know what? I think they got a lift on the bus. They were probably on the roof the whole time. And then us as kids would just be so caught by that. And we'd talk about where the magpies were going next and if they were going to get cherries on their way home and stuff like that. And she always had that sense of imagination. I suppose then when I was 7, my life got a little bit more complicated. There was one day, Mum kind of announced that she was taking us for a drive, me and my brother Paul. And it was kind of weird because she was quiet, she wasn't talking, and she was crying. I didn't really understand why. And then she parked into a park nearby and got into the back with me and my brother and put an arm around each of us and told us through tears that her and Dad were getting divorced. Now, I didn't know what that meant really at the time. I was only 7, but I knew it wasn't something good. Now, looking back at it retrospectively, I know that that was a day that very much changed my whole life. The whole process afterwards it took about 10 years to get the divorce. It was very tough and it was a very intense and sad time. And I suppose what it did to me was that it made me quite cynical. I lost my sense of play and my imagination quite quickly because it didn't seem like useful when I realized or had experienced the world to be so mean and nasty and cruel. It's like, what use was imagination and play if I knew that the world wasn't nice anymore? I'd also, during that time, learned how to distrust adults, and I didn't really think that they were out to protect me anymore. So it was kind of tough, but the person that was there through the whole thing was Flo. Every day after school, going to see her and having those massive bowls of stew. Every day was a comfort because it was steady and it was consistent, so that was amazing. And then I suppose skip forward to when I was 15, I was still going to Flo's. I was quite cynical and cool and full of teenagery angst as well. And we had our bowls of stew and Flo had given us lollipops for dessert. And I was kind of the oldest of the kids that she minded, so I went around and collected all the lollipop sticks after the kids were done. I was about to put them in the bin, and Flo went, oh no, don't throw them out just yet. And I was like, oh, why? She's like, come down to the garden with me and I'll show you. So we gathered all the kids and went down to the bottom of the garden, and there was this big red flower pot that I hadn't seen before. And it was filled with fresh soil, which had clearly been bought like the day before. I was like, what is this? And then she got all of us, she said, okay, so now each one of you need to plant your lollipop stick in the soil. I was like, what? Now, cynical, angsty teenager, moody, not trust anyone. I was thinking, I'm not doing that. That's not cool. But the kids were there. So I was like, no, I'll do it for the kids. So I'll do it for the kids. I'm not doing it. I'm not really doing it for them. So they were planting the lollipop sticks. And what I remember about that is not that they were planting lollipop sticks, but that my attention was totally on Flo. I was like looking at her, and I couldn't take my attention off her because I was waiting for her to give me the knowing nod or the knowing wink to say, you and me both know this isn't real. You and me both know that nothing's going to happen and this is just for the kids. But she never did. And I was always kind of a little frustrated by that because it wasn't in keeping with my idea of adults weren't trustworthy or adults weren't able to imagine or play. But she held steadfast to it. So we went away, forgot about it the next day, came back, had our stew, and as coy and as sly as anything, Flo, just out of the corner of her eye, looks in as, God, I wonder if those lollipops have grown yet. And then all of the kids hear this and they go berserk. And they're like, oh my God, the lollipops! And leg it down to the bottom of the garden, down to the flower pot. And I remember I just kind of sauntered real coolly behind them, like not want to commit or get excited. And sure enough, when I got down to the pot, there were about 10 new, bright, colourful, beautiful lollipops sticking out of the soil. And it was like, I remember that moment just being kind of flooring me, not because lollipops were growing out of the soil, which, by the way, Flo will take to her grave that she had nothing to do with that. Nothing. It wasn't her. It was magic. And I remember it was so significant because here was an adult who I loved and that cared for me, was having imagination and fun and play, even though she knows and I know that the world isn't fair or nice and it's cruel, but she chooses to play and imagine anyway. And also that here was an adult that hadn't let me down. And it was so significant to me, and still is such a significant moment because now I play professionally. I'm an actor and writer and director, so that's amazing. But also, like, I think it's more significant for me because of the day-to-day lesson that I hold dear for it. Is like I play with my four-year-old cousin Juliet, and like when I play. I'm like octopus on the ground, I'm a mountain, I'm a pirate, I'm whatever you need me to be, and I'm that until like someone says the stew is ready. You know, it's so important to me to play with like that, like Flo. And she definitely taught me the magic that you can see in every day if you choose to see it. Even to believe that lollipops can grow from the ground. I do, because I've seen it. Thank you.